The scent of lavender and sage wafted through the air, mingling with the heady aroma of incense that burned in golden braziers along the walls of the grand temple. Outside, the autumn wind whistled through ancient pines, carrying whispers of change and uncertainty. I adjusted the delicate crown of white moonflowers nestled in my pale blonde hair, my fingers trembling slightly against my will. The ceremonial dress, silver and white with intricate embroidery depicting the phases of the moon, felt heavy on my shoulders, like a burden rather than the honor it was meant to be. "Hold still," my handmaiden Ilara murmured, fastening the final crystal button at my back. Her eyes caught mine in the reflection of the polished silver mirror. "You look beautiful, Clara, a true Luna Queen." I swallowed hard, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Beautiful or not, I knew what I was. A political arrangement, a treaty signed in flesh and blood. The daughter of the weakest pack in the Northern Territories, offered to King Roman Nightshade to secure peace and protection. An alliance of convenience that would save my family from the increasingly violent raids that had claimed my father's life just last winter. The small music box my grandmother had given me sat on the dressing table, its painted wolves dancing beneath a silver moon. "Remember, little one," she had whispered to me on her deathbed, pressing the treasure into my small hands. "True strength isn't in claws or teeth, but in a heart that bends without breaking." I touched the box gently, drawing comfort from the smooth wood. It was the only thing I had brought from my old life, a reminder of who I was before I became a pawn in this game of power. Through the stained glass windows, I could see the gathered crowd in the temple's main chamber. Hundreds of Lycan nobility from every territory, their expensive clothes and jewels glittering in the afternoon light. And at the altar waited Roman Nightshade, the Lycan king of the Eastern realms, my soon-to-be husband. Even from a distance he commanded attention. Tall and imposing, with broad shoulders and midnight black hair that fell to his shoulders. I had only met him twice before today, once when the treaty was signed, and once at the formal engagement ceremony 3 months ago. Both times he had barely looked at me, speaking instead to my uncle who now served as our pack's alpha. Both times I had felt like a ghost, transparent and unseen. "It's time," announced Elder Mira, the high priestess who would perform the bonding ceremony. Her ancient eyes, still sharp despite her advanced years, assessed me with an unreadable expression. "The moon rises. We must not keep the king waiting." The procession began, and my heart hammered against my ribs with each step. The great doors opened, and every head turned as the musicians played the traditional bonding melody. I forced myself to walk with the grace I had been drilled to display, keeping my eyes lowered as custom demanded of an unmated female approaching her alpha. Only when I reached the altar did I allow myself to look up at Roman. His eyes, a startling amber that seemed to glow with their own inner light, were cold and distant, examining me as one might inspect a horse at auction. The power radiating from him made the air around us feel charged, electric. He was every inch the predator, the apex alpha that legends whispered about. Elder Mira began the ancient words, her voice ringing through the silent temple. "Under the watching moon, we gather to witness the joining of souls, the binding of bloodlines, the strengthening of our kind through sacred union." I barely heard the rest. My focus narrowed to Roman's expression, which had shifted from disinterest to something darker. A muscle twitched in his jaw. His nostrils flared slightly, and then, as Elder Mira asked him to take my hands for the blood oath, he stepped back. The silence that followed was deafening. "I cannot complete this ceremony," he said, his deep voice resonating through the temple. There was no emotion in it, just cold finality. Elder Mira's wrinkled face paled. "My king? This woman," Roman continued, not looking at me but addressing the stunned crowd, "carries a scent that marks her as incompatible with the royal bloodline. The moon goddess has shown me a vision. This union would bring weakness to our territories, not strength." Murmurs rippled through the audience. My uncle rose from his seat, his face ashen. "King Nightshade, we have an agreement." The agreement presumed she was suitable. Roman cut him off. "I will honor our alliance in other ways, but not through this bonding." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Incompatible. Weakness. The words echoed in my mind as I stood there, publicly humiliated before the most powerful Lycans in the realm. Heat rose to my face, but I refused to let tears fall. My grandmother's music box suddenly felt heavy in the hidden pocket of my ceremonial dress. True strength isn't in claws or teeth, but in a heart that bends without breaking. I lifted my chin and looked directly into Roman's cold amber eyes. "As you wish, Your Majesty," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "The moon's will cannot be questioned." Then, with as much dignity as I could muster, I removed the crown of moonflowers from my hair and placed it on the altar. The symbolic gesture, rejecting the role before it could reject me further, caused another wave of whispers. That night, as the celebration feast continued without a bride, transformed into some strange political summit, I slipped away from the guest chambers. The guards paid little attention to me now that I was no longer to be their queen. I changed into simpler clothes, packed what little I had, and took the service corridors to the stables. My uncle would understand. There was no place for me here anymore, and my presence would only complicate the new negotiations he was desperately trying to salvage with Roman's advisors. What no one knew, what I myself had only confirmed 3 days before, was that I carried a secret beneath my heart. Twice during our formal meetings, Roman had come to me in the night, driven by some primal need he seemed to resent even as he acted on it. "This changes nothing," he had said both times before disappearing before dawn, and he was right. It had changed nothing in his cold calculation of power, but it had changed everything for me. As I rode away from the temple in the capital city under the cover of darkness, one hand protectively covering my still flat stomach, I made a silent vow to the tiny lives growing inside me. You will never know rejection. You will never be pawns. And you will never, ever believe your worth depends on someone else's approval. The path ahead was uncertain, but my grandmother's words echoed in my mind. A heart that bends without breaking. I would bend, adapt, survive, but I would not break. Not for Roman Nightshade, not for anyone. Dawn was breaking over the mountains by the time I reached the crossroads where the main highway split toward the human territories. I had friends there. A human woman named Sarah, who had once saved my life during a hunting accident, years before my engagement. Her village sat just beyond Lycan jurisdiction, a place where supernatural politics rarely reached. 6 months later, I gave birth to twins in Sarah's modest cottage at the edge of the forest. A boy and a girl, both with my pale hair, but their father's striking amber eyes. I named them Elian and Arya, names from human storybooks rather than Lycan tradition. Names that would help them blend in, help them hide. As I held them in my arms that first night, watching their tiny faces as they slept, I whispered promises I intended to keep for as long as I drew breath. Your father may be a king, but you will be more than royalty. You will be free. Years passed in the quiet human village of Willowbrook. I opened a small apothecary shop, using the herbal knowledge passed down through generations of my pack. The twins grew strong and healthy, showing early signs of their Lycan heritage that I carefully taught them to control. Full moons were spent deep in the forest, where their transformations could remain our secret. The small cottage Sarah had helped me purchase became home, its garden bursting with herbs and its walls adorned with drawings the children made. Elian was thoughtful and observant, his sister's fierce protector despite being born just minutes before her. Arya was wild and curious, with a laugh that could charm birds from trees. They were 5 when they first asked about their father. "Mama, why don't we have a father like the other children?" Elian asked one evening as I tucked them into bed. I had prepared for this question, rehearsed an answer that was neither lie nor full truth. "Your father is a very powerful man who lives far away," I said carefully. "He has important responsibilities that keep him from us." "Is he a king?" Arya asked, her amber eyes wide with excitement. Like in the stories? My heart stumbled. Had someone told them? Had I let something slip? "Why would you ask that, little one?" She shrugged, hugging her stuffed wolf to her chest. "Because you always say we have to be careful in secret. Only kings have secrets worth keeping, right?" I smiled, relieved and heartbroken at once. "Yes, in a way, he is like a king, and you are both very special because of who you are. But remember our most important rule. Never show our wolf unless we're deep in the forest with you, they recited together. That's right, I said, kissing their foreheads. Now sleep, my little moonbeams. That night, I sat by the window, watching the waxing moon and wondering if Roman ever thought of me, if he even knew what he had lost. Did he have other children now? A proper Luna Queen? Had he ever suspected the true reason the village hedge witch had spoken those lies about my scent being incompatible, lies I had paid for with my mother's jewelry to escape a marriage I'd realized would slowly kill my spirit? 7 years had passed since the wedding that never was. 7 years of peace and simple joys, of watching my children grow, of building a life beyond the politics of packs and territories. 7 years of looking over my shoulder, of jumping at shadows, of elaborate precautions whenever we needed to visit neighboring towns. I thought we were safe. I thought we were careful. I was wrong. The first sign came on an ordinary market day. A stranger in expensive clothes asking questions about the blonde herbalist and her unusual eyes. Then came the rumors of recruiters searching for unmated females with specific bloodlines for the royal court. A thinly veiled excuse to examine young women throughout the region. Finally, there was the black wolf I glimpsed at the forest's edge 3 nights in a row, watching our cottage with unnatural stillness. We need to leave, I told Sarah as we frantically packed the children's belongings. Tonight. Clara, you can't just disappear again, she argued, though she continued helping me gather essential supplies. The twins are established here. They have friends, a life. They have nothing if they're discovered, I hissed, lower than the children could hear from their room. You don't understand what he's capable of. If Roman finds them, he'll take them from me. They'll become weapons in his arsenal, tools for his ambitions. Everything I've done to give them normal lives will be destroyed. Sarah's expression softened. Then let me help you. My cousin in the Western Isles. Remember I told you about him? His community is even more isolated and they don't ask questions. You could start over there. I hesitated, then nodded. We'll need papers, new names. I know someone who can help with that too, she assured me, squeezing my hand. But Clara, you can't run forever. Sooner or later you'll have to face him. Looking at my beautiful children as they obediently packed their favorite books and toys, unaware that their world was about to change again, I felt a resolve harden within me. Not yet, I whispered. They're still too young, too vulnerable. But someday they'll be strong enough to know the truth. And then, perhaps, so will I. 3 more years passed on the Western Isles, where salt-laden winds and crashing waves became the soundtrack to our lives. We settled in a small fishing village called Mistport, where the perpetual sea mist provided an extra layer of concealment. The locals were a mix of humans and a few supernatural beings who valued privacy above all else. Here, we became the Bennett family, Clara, Elian, and Arya Bennett, herbal healers new to the area but quick to prove our worth. Our cottage sat on a cliff overlooking the sea, its stone walls thick enough to muffle the sounds of young wolves learning to control their monthly transformations. The twins were 8 now, growing stronger and more perceptive with each passing moon. I had begun teaching them more about their heritage, careful stories about Lycan culture, without revealing their royal bloodline or the circumstances of our escape. But why did we leave our old pack? Elian asked one evening as I braided Arya's pale blonde hair, so similar to my own. Was there a fight? Did someone die? I met his curious amber eyes, so like his father's in color yet warmer, filled with compassion that Roman had always lacked. Sometimes, Moon Cub, packs have different ideas about how things should be. I wanted you both to grow up somewhere peaceful, where you could make your own choices. Spice, were you scared? Arya twisted to look at me, her small face serious, my hand stilled in her hair. Yes, I admitted. I was scared, but not for myself. For you. A mother wolf will do anything to protect her cubs. Even fight the alpha? Elian pressed, something knowing in his young voice that made my heart skip. I resumed braiding, keeping my tone light. Even that, if necessary. The conversation shifted to other topics, but I caught the twins exchanging glances. A silent communication they'd developed since before they could talk. They were getting older, more difficult to distract with partial truths. Soon, they would demand more, and I wasn't sure what I would tell them. Life settled into a rhythm in Mistport. My apothecary skills were valued. especially among the fishing families whose livelihoods depended on weather-beaten hands, remaining strong and supple. The twins attended the village school, where they excelled, despite my worries about them accidentally revealing their nature. They had inherited not just their father's eyes, but his quick intelligence, though thankfully tempered with empathy, that made them beloved among their peers rather than feared. On the twins' 10th birthday, I took them to the highest cliff beyond our cottage. The full moon hung low and heavy over the ocean, bathing everything in silver light. It was time for a tradition, one I'd created for them, pieced together from my pack's customs and new elements that honored our life now. "Tonight," I said, as we sat in a circle on the cliff's edge, "you are 10 years old. In the old ways, this would be the night of first knowing, when young Lycans begin to understand their place in the pack and the wider world." Their faces were solemn in the moonlight, sensing the importance of the moment. "I've brought gifts," I continued, placing 2 small wooden boxes before them. "Open them." Inside each box was a pendant. Simple leather cords holding a piece of polished moonstone wrapped in silver wire. I'd spent months crafting them, infusing the stones with protective herbs during each phase of the moon. "These are your moon shields," I explained as they slipped the pendants over their heads. "They'll help you control your shifts, especially as you get older and your wolf grows stronger. But more importantly, they're a promise." "What kind of promise?" Arya asked, fingering the stone that now rested against her heart. "A promise that no matter how far apart we might ever be, we're connected. By blood, by love, and by the same moon that watches over all wolves." My voice nearly broke on the words. The fear of separation had never left me, not completely, and a promise that someday, when you're ready, I'll tell you everything about where we come from. Elian's eyes met mine, serious beyond his years. "You mean about our father, the king?" The world seemed to stop. The crash of waves below faded to silence. My carefully constructed reality cracked along its foundation. "What did you say?" "We know he's a king," Arya said simply. "We've always known." "How?" The word barely escaped my throat. Elian shrugged. "Dreams, mostly. I see a man with eyes like ours sitting on a throne made of what looks like moonstone and dark wood. There are people bowing to him, and I hear whispers," Arya added. "When we run as wolves under the full moon, sometimes the wind carries voices. They call him the Lycan king." I pulled them both into my arms, my heart racing with fear and awe. The bond between royal Lycan twins was legendary, stronger than normal sibling connections, allowing them shared dreams, thoughts, and sometimes even glimpses across distances. But I had never expected it would connect them to a father they'd never met. "Are you angry, Mama?" Elian whispered against my shoulder. "No, moon cub. Just surprised." I pulled back, studying their faces. "What else do you know?" They exchanged that look again. "We know you ran away," Arya said. "We know you're hiding us from him. And we know you're scared he'll find us," Elian finished. "But we don't know why." I took a deep breath. They deserved some truth, even if they weren't ready for all of it. "Yes, your father is a king, the Lycan king of the Eastern Realms. And yes, I left before you were born because things were complicated between us." "Did he hurt you?" Elian's voice had dropped, a hint of a growl underlining the words. "Not in the way you're thinking," I said carefully, "but he would have taken control of our lives in ways that would have hurt us all eventually. I wanted you both to be free to choose your own paths, not be forced into roles because of your bloodline." "Does he know about us?" Arya asked. I shook my head. "No. At least I don't think so. Is that why we keep moving? Why you get scared when strangers come to town?" Arya persisted. "Yes." There was no point denying what they'd clearly observed. The royal court has resources I don't. If they found out about you, they would take you back to the capital. Royal children belong to the crown as much as to their parents in Lycan society. Elian's face hardened with resolve. "We won't let them take us from you. And we won't tell anyone about being whatever we are," Arya promised, squeezing my hand. I kissed their foreheads, my brave, intuitive children. Half-royal Lycans. The term is royal-blooded. And thank you, but this isn't your burden to carry. It's mine to protect you both, Later that night, after they were asleep, I sat on our cottage porch watching the moon set over the ocean. Their revelations had shaken me deeply. If they could sense Roman, could he sense them? Was the connection one way or mutual? Had I been naive to think we could stay hidden forever? My grandmother's music box sat open beside me, its melody playing softly in the night air. I thought of her words again, a heart that bends without breaking. How much more bending could I do before something snapped? Spring turned to summer, and the twins continued to grow in strength and knowledge. I increased their training, teaching them more control techniques for their shifting abilities and more about Lycan customs. If the time came when hiding was no longer an option, they would need to understand the world they might be forced to enter. It was a warm evening in late summer, when our carefully constructed peace shattered. The twins were playing on the beach below our cliff, and I was gathering sea lavender for a special tincture. The sound of an unfamiliar boat engine cut through the usual harbor noise. Looking up, I saw a sleek vessel, far too expensive for our humble fishing village, docking at the main pier. 4 men disembarked, their bearing immediately marking them as different. They moved with the controlled grace of predators, scanning their surroundings with 2 keen eyes. Even from a distance, I could tell what they were: Lycans. Royal Guards, based on the identical black leather jackets bearing a subtle insignia on the shoulder, Roman's personal crest. My blood turned to ice. I abandoned my basket and ran down the path toward the beach, keeping to the shadows where possible. The guards were speaking to the harbor master, who was pointing in the general direction of our cottage. One guard produced what looked like a photograph, and the old man nodded. They had found us. I reached the beach, where Elian and Arya were balancing on tide-exposed rocks, laughing as they jumped from one to another. "Children," I called, keeping my voice low but urgent. "Come here now." They heard the fear in my tone and immediately scrambled over, water dripping from their rolled-up pants. "What's wrong?" Elian asked, instantly alert. "We need to go. Now, up the back path." I nudged them toward the narrow trail that wound up the cliff face, hidden from the main road by thick gorse bushes. "Is it him? Is it our father?" Arya whispered as we climbed. "No. His men." I helped them over a particularly steep section. "Listen carefully. When we get home, you'll each grab the emergency packs from under your beds, just like we've practiced. Then we'll go out through the root cellar tunnel." "Where will we go?" Elian asked, remarkably calm for a 10-year-old whose life was being uprooted yet again. "There's an old friend in the Northern Territories, a place your father's influence doesn't reach. We'll be safe there." I had maintained contact with exactly one person from my old pack, my cousin Maya, who had married into the Free Northern Alliance, a coalition of independent packs that recognized no king. We reached the cottage and moved with practiced efficiency, gathering only what we couldn't leave behind. As I stuffed medicines and important documents into my pack, I saw headlights through the front window. A black SUV was making its way up the winding cliff road toward our home. "Through the cellar. Now." I ushered the twins toward the kitchen where a trap door led to our escape route. A tunnel I'd spent months secretly digging shortly after we arrived, always preparing for this moment I'd prayed would never come. Elian went first, then Arya. I was just about to follow when I hesitated, turning back to grab my grandmother's music box from my bedside table. It was foolish, perhaps, to risk capture for a sentimental item, but I couldn't bear to leave behind this last connection to my past. The extra seconds cost me dearly. Just as I reached the cellar stairs, the front door burst open. 2 royal guards stood in the doorway, their amber eyes, the mark of Roman's elite force, glowing in the dim light. "Clara Blackwell," one said, using my birth name with certainty. "By order of King Roman Nightshade, you are to return with us to the eastern capital immediately." I straightened my spine, clutching the music box to my chest. "I no longer answer to that name or to your king's orders." The second guard stepped forward. "We have information that you've borne children of royal blood. The king demands their presence at court as well." My heart turned to stone, so he knew. After all these years, Roman had discovered the twins' existence. "There are no children here," I lied. praying Elian and Arya had the sense to keep moving through the tunnel, as we'd discussed in our emergency drills. The first guard sniffed the air deliberately. "We can smell them, Luna. 3 distinct scents in this house, 2 of them young. Where are the royal heirs?" "Don't call me that," I snapped. "I was never Luna Queen, perhaps not officially," the guard conceded with a slight incline of his head, almost respectful. "But you carry the scent mark of the king, faint but present. And your children carry his bloodline. That makes them royal heirs, regardless of ceremony." I took a step back, closer to the cellar door. "What does Roman want with children he rejected before they were even born?" The guards exchanged glances. "The king hasn't shared his specific intentions," the second one admitted. "But the law is clear. Royal bloodline belongs at court." "My children are persons, not property," I said, my voice hardening. "They belong wherever they choose to be. The king has extended his full protection and recognition," the first guard said, as if offering a tremendous gift. "Your children will be acknowledged as royal-blooded. They will want for nothing. Except freedom," I countered. "Except choice." The second guard's expression hardened. "We have orders to bring all 3 of you back. We would prefer to do so peacefully." The threat hung in the air between us. I had seconds to decide: fight and likely lose, guaranteeing all 3 of us would be dragged back to Roman, or create a diversion that might give the twins a chance to escape. I chose the latter, letting my wolf rise just below the surface, enough to sharpen my reflexes but not fully shift. I hurled the music box at the first guard's head with all my strength. As he ducked, I launched myself at the second one, claws extended. The surprise gave me a momentary advantage. I raked my claws across his face and shoved him into his companion, then bolted for the front door. "After her!" one shouted as I raced into the night. The children must be nearby. I ran in the opposite direction from the escape tunnel's exit, leading them away from where I prayed the twins were still fleeing. The path along the cliff edge was dangerous at night, but I knew every root and stone. The guards followed, their heavy footsteps gaining on me with each stride. The cliff edge loomed ahead, the sea crashing against rocks 100 feet below. I had nowhere left to run. "Enough, Clara," called one guard as they slowed their approach, seeing my predicament. "There's nowhere to go. Come back with us, and no harm will come to you or the children." I stood at the precipice, the wind whipping my hair around my face. "Tell Roman," I said clearly, "that his children are free, and they will remain free." Then I turned and leaped from the cliff. The frigid water hit me like 1,000 needles, stealing my breath as I plunged beneath the waves. I had aimed for the deepest part of the cove, where I knew the water would cushion my fall. Still, the impact sent pain radiating through every limb. I stayed submerged, swimming away from the cliff face, lungs burning until I couldn't hold my breath any longer. When I finally surfaced, I was well away from where I'd jumped. The guards stood at the cliff edge, their silhouettes dark against the night sky. One was speaking urgently into a radio. I ducked beneath the waves again before they could spot me, swimming toward a small cave accessible only from the water, one of several escape routes I'd scouted when we first arrived. By the time I dragged myself onto the narrow stone ledge inside the sea cave, my muscles screamed with exhaustion. I lay there gasping, salt water burning my throat, trying to gather my strength. The twins. I needed to reach the twins. We had a rendezvous point, an abandoned lighthouse 3 miles up the coast. But to get there, I would need to circle around the village unseen. I gave myself 5 minutes to recover, then forced my battered body upright. The cave connected to a narrow fissure that led to the forest above. Climbing it in wet clothes was a misery, but fear for my children drove me forward. By the time I emerged among the trees, I could hear vehicles on the main road and see flashlight beams sweeping the shoreline below. The search was intensifying, moving silently through the forest. I kept to the densest shadows, grateful for the cloud cover that now obscured the moon. My wolf senses guided me where human eyes would have failed, detecting subtle changes in the terrain and alerting me to the presence of search parties before they came too close. It took me nearly 2 hours to reach the lighthouse, anxiety building with each passing minute. Had the twins made it? Had they remembered the plan? Had they been captured despite my diversion? The lighthouse stood dark and abandoned on its rocky promontory, exactly as it had for decades. No signs of life were visible, but that meant nothing. I'd taught the children well how to conceal their presence. I approached cautiously, using our family's special whistle signal. 3 short notes, one long, like the first bars of a lullaby I'd sung to them since infancy. For a moment, silence answered me, and my heart sank. Then faintly came the response. The next 3 notes of the melody, whistled from somewhere inside the crumbling structure. "Elian? Aria?" I called softly as I entered through a broken window, avoiding the front door that might be watched. 2 small forms hurtled from the shadows, colliding with me in a tangle of arms and relief. "Mom," they whispered in unison, their bodies trembling against mine. "My brave cubs," I murmured, holding them tight. "Did anyone follow you? Did you see anyone on your way here?" Elian shook his head. "We did everything like you taught us. We stayed downwind, kept to the trees, and checked our trail. We heard them looking for us," Aria added, her voice small. "They kept saying the royal heirs over and over." I smoothed her hair back from her face. "I know, but they won't find us. Not here." "What happens now?" Elian asked, always the practical one. "Now we wait until dawn," I replied. "I have a contact in the fishing village on the other side of the island. He owes me a favor and won't ask questions. He'll take us to the mainland on his boat, and from there, we'll make our way north." "To the free territories?" Aria's eyes widened. She'd always loved the stories I'd told about the independent packs of the far north. "Yes. To my cousin Maya. Her mate is a pack leader there. They'll protect us. But what about our things? Our books? My shell collection?" Aria's lip trembled slightly. I cupped her face in my hands. "Things can be replaced, Moonbeam. You and your brother are all that matter." We huddled together in the lighthouse keeper's old quarters, sharing body heat as our clothes slowly dried. I had nothing to offer them but reassurances, and as the adrenaline of our escape faded, fatigue claimed the twins. They fell asleep curled against me, their breathing deep and even despite everything. I remained awake, listening for any sound of pursuit. In the stillness, my thoughts turned to Roman. How had he discovered the twins' existence after all this time? What did he truly want with them? The guards had spoken of protection and recognition, terms that sounded generous but could hide darker intentions. In Lycan society, royal children were valuable commodities, potential alliances to be bartered or pawns to secure power. When first light broke over the horizon, I gently woke the twins. We slipped out of the lighthouse and made our way through morning mist to the small fishing village on the island's northern shore. True to his word, Old Finn asked no questions when I appeared at his door with 2 exhausted children, requesting discreet passage to the mainland. By noon, we were on his weathered boat, watching the Western Isles shrink into the distance. "Will they keep looking for us?" Elian asked as we stood at the boat's rail. I didn't sugarcoat the truth. "Yes. Your father has resources I can only imagine, but the northern territories are vast and wild, and many there don't recognize his authority." "I don't understand," Aria frowned. "If he didn't want us before, why does he want us now?" A question that had haunted me through the night. "I don't know for certain," I admitted. "Perhaps he only recently learned about you. Perhaps something has changed in the royal court. Maybe he's sorry," Elian suggested quietly, "for whatever happened between you." I touched his shoulder gently. "Perhaps. But we can't risk our freedom on that hope." 3 days of careful travel brought us to the edge of the northern territories, a rugged landscape of mountains and ancient forests, where boundaries between pack lands were marked by scent rather than maps. My cousin Maya met us at a prearranged location, embracing me with tears in her eyes. "When I got your emergency message, I feared the worst," she said. "Are you hurt?" "Just exhausted," I assured her. "Maya, these are my children, Elian and Aria." She knelt to their level, her expression warm. "You have your mother's spirit in your eyes," she told them. "Welcome to the free territories." Maya's mate, Liam, was alpha of the Stonecrest Pack, one of 7 allied groups that made up the Free Northern Alliance. Their territory centered around a mountain valley rich with game and protected by natural barriers on 3 sides. Their compound consisted of sturdy wooden cabins arranged in a circle around a central meeting area, with the alpha pair's larger home situated on a rise overlooking the settlement. "You'll stay with us," Maya insisted, as she showed us to a cabin near their own. "The guest house has stood empty since spring. It's yours for as long as you need." For the first time in 3 days, I felt some of the tension leave my body. We were among friends, in territory beyond Roman's reach. The twins, too, seemed to sense the change, their shoulders relaxing as they explored our new accommodations. That night, after the children were settled, I sat with Maya and Liam in their home, explaining everything. The arranged marriage, Roman's rejection, my pregnancy and flight, and now the king's sudden interest in his heirs. "The timing is suspicious," Liam mused, his weathered face thoughtful. "After 10 years of silence, why seek them now?" Maya poured me another cup of tea. "There have been rumors from the east, unrest among the territories, challenges to Roman's leadership." I frowned. Roman's position seemed unassailable when I knew him. His bloodline has ruled for generations. "Things change," Liam said simply, "and royal twins would strengthen his claim considerably." The implication settled heavily in my chest. "You think he wants to use them to solidify his power? Parade them as proof of his continuing bloodline?" "It's possible," Maya nodded. "Or perhaps there's something more. Royal Lycan twins are rare, Clara. The bond between them creates unique abilities. In the old histories, twin heirs were considered blessed by the moon goddess herself. They've already shown signs of that connection," I admitted. "They share dreams, sometimes thoughts. They've even sensed things about Roman, despite never having met him." Liam leaned forward, his interest sharpened. "What kind of things?" "Impressions, mostly. They've seen him in dreams, sitting on his throne making proclamations. They somehow know he's a king without my ever telling them." Maya and Liam exchanged significant glances. "There are old stories," Maya said carefully, "about royal twins being able to amplify each other's powers, and by extension, the power of those blood bonded to them. If Roman knows this, he might see them as a source of power, not just legitimacy." I finished, a chill running through me despite the warm fire. "All the more reason to keep them hidden." "You'll be safe here," Liam assured me. "Our territory is well defended, and the Alliance stands together against Eastern interference. Besides, we're officially outside Roman's jurisdiction. He has no authority to demand anyone's return from free territory." I wanted to believe him, but years of vigilance weren't easily set aside. "Thank you," I said simply. "For now, I just want the twins to have some stability, some normalcy." "They'll have that," Maya promised. "Our pack values family above all else. The children will be welcomed, protected. They can attend lessons with our other cubs, make friends, be children instead of fugitives." That night, for the first time in years, I slept deeply, without jerking awake at every sound. The knowledge that others stood guard, that we weren't alone in our vigilance, allowed my exhausted body to finally surrender to rest. The twins adapted to pack life with remarkable ease. Within days, they were running with the other cubs, learning pack hunting techniques, absorbing the history and customs Maya taught in the communal lessons. I watched them bloom in this environment of acceptance, where their Lycan nature could be expressed freely instead of hidden. Seasons changed, and we settled into the rhythms of pack life. Winter gave way to spring, then summer, and before I knew it, we had been with the Stonecrest pack for nearly a year. The twins thrived in this environment where they could express their wolf nature openly. They grew stronger, faster, more confident in both their human and wolf forms. Elian excelled at strategy games and pack hunting tactics, often impressing even the adult wolves with his thoughtful approach to challenges. Arya discovered a talent for healing, spending hours at my side learning to identify medicinal plants and prepare remedies that combined Lycan knowledge with the skills I'd developed in human territories. My own role in the pack evolved naturally. I began as Maya's assistant in the communal kitchen, then gradually took on more responsibilities as my knowledge of herbs and medicines proved valuable. By autumn, I had become the pack's official healer, working alongside the elder who had previously held the position alone. "You found your place here," Maya observed one evening as we watched the twins play with other pack children around the central bonfire. "I haven't seen you look this at peace since we were young." I smiled, acknowledging the truth in her words. "It feels like home," I admitted. "More than anywhere has since I left our birth pack. And the children are thriving," she added, nodding toward Elian, who was demonstrating a complex wrestling move to younger cubs, while Arya cheered him on. "They belong here, Clara." "Yes," I agreed softly. "They do." That night, as I tucked them into their beds, Arya asked the question I'd been expecting for months. "Mom, are we going to stay here forever?" I sat on the edge of her bed, considering my answer carefully. "Would you like that?" She nodded, her pale hair catching the lamplight. "I like having friends who know what I am. I like running as a wolf whenever I want. I like not being scared anymore." From his bed across the room, Elian added, "And Liam says I could train to be a guardian when I'm older. He says I have good instincts." Pride warmed my chest at their accomplishments, at how well they had adapted. "Then yes," I decided. "As long as it's safe, this is our home now." "What about Father?" Elian asked quietly. "Will he find us here?" The question pierced my newfound sense of security. "The free territories are beyond his reach," I reminded them, repeating what I'd told them many times since our arrival. "And even if he learned where we were, he has no authority here." "But he's still looking," Arya said. It wasn't a question. I smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "Probably," I acknowledged. "But we're protected here. The whole pack watches over us." They seemed satisfied with this answer, settling back against their pillows. As I was about to blow out the lamp, Elian spoke again. "I saw him again, in my dreams. He was arguing with someone." My hand stilled on the lamp. "Recently?" He nodded. "Last night. He looked tired. Older than before." "Could you hear what they were saying?" I tried to keep my tone casual, though my heart had begun to race. "Something about rightful succession and pure bloodlines." Elian frowned, trying to remember. "The other man was angry, saying Father had no confirmed heirs and was unfit to rule." Arya sat up. "I had the same dream," she said, her eyes wide. "The angry man had a scar across his cheek right here." She traced a line from her temple to her jaw. My blood ran cold. The twins' shared dreams had always been consistent, accurate glimpses into actual events, not mere fantasies. If they were seeing Roman facing challenges to his rule. "Thank you for telling me," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Dreams are important messages from our wolf spirits." Once they were asleep, I went immediately to find Liam and Maya. They listened gravely as I repeated what the twins had shared. "The scarred man would be Dominic's Stormwolf," Liam said, his expression grim. "Roman's cousin and the most vocal challenger to his rule. There have been rumors of discord in the Eastern Court for months now. Do you think Roman is seeking the twins because of this challenge?" I asked. "To secure his position?" Maya nodded slowly. "It would make sense. Royal twins, presented at court as his legitimate heirs, would silence many who question his fitness to rule, especially with their rare abilities. Then we must be more vigilant than ever," I concluded. "If his need is greater, his search will intensify." Liam squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. "Our borders are well patrolled, Clara. No eastern wolves enter our territory without our knowledge." Despite his confidence, I doubled my efforts to prepare the twins for any eventuality. I increased their training in both human and wolf skills. How to hide their scents, how to move silently through different terrains, how to recognize danger before it recognized them. They accepted these lessons without complaint, understanding their necessity even as they embraced their new life in the pack. Winter came again, harsh and beautiful in the northern mountains. The pack gathered close, sharing stories and food around communal fires during the long, cold nights. The twins turned 11, then 12, growing stronger and more skilled with each passing moon. Their bond with each other deepened as well, their shared dreams becoming more frequent, more detailed. It was Arya who first sensed the change. One bitterly cold morning, she woke with a strangled cry that brought me instantly to her bedside. "He's coming," she gasped, her amber eyes wide with fear. "He's actually coming here." Elian was already awake, sitting rigid in his bed. I saw it too. "He's on a ship sailing north. There are others with him. Royal guards." I tried to remain calm, though panic clawed at my throat. Are you certain it was the north he was traveling to? Could it have been somewhere else? They both shook their heads with the absolute certainty only twins could share. He was looking at a map, Elian said. I could see it clearly. It showed the northern territories. And he had something in his hand, Arya added. Something small that glinted in the light. What was it? I asked, though dread was already pooling in my stomach. Your music box, she whispered. The one with the painted wolves, the box I'd thrown at the guards during our escape from the Western Isles. The box that contained my scent, my essence, something any powerful Lycan could use to track me across vast distances. I'd believed it lost, perhaps destroyed in the struggle. Instead, it had become a compass pointing directly to us. I sent the twins to dress while I hurried to alert Liam and Maya. Within the hour, the Pack Council had convened in the main lodge, the situation laid out starkly before them. The king has no jurisdiction here, reminded Tessa, one of the older council members. We are a sovereign territory. Laws mean little to those with power and determination, countered Liam. If Roman Nightshade has indeed set his sights on reclaiming his heirs, he won't be deterred by territorial boundaries. Then we must prepare to defend ourselves, declared Kira, the pack's lead guardian. No eastern wolves enter our territory without permission, king or otherwise. The debate continued, voices rising as opinions divided. Some advocated for diplomacy, meeting Roman at the border, hearing his demands while maintaining our sovereignty. Others insisted on immediate defensive preparations, arguing that a royal contingent approaching without invitation could only signal hostile intent. Through it all, I sat silent, a terrible realization growing within me. This moment had always been inevitable. No matter how far we ran, how well we hid, Roman's resources would eventually lead him to his children, and now, my presence had brought potential danger to a pack that had shown us nothing but kindness. There's another option, I finally said, my voice cutting through the arguments. All eyes turned to me. I could take the twins and leave, draw Roman away from your territory entirely. Absolutely not, Maya said immediately. Your pack now. We protect our own. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, warming me even as I shook my head. I won't risk bringing war to your doorstep. This is between Roman and me, and what happens if you leave and he captures you? Liam asked quietly. What happens to the twins then? The question hung heavily in the air. We all knew the answer. They would be taken to court, raised as royal heirs, molded to serve Roman's purposes. Everything I had fought to prevent for 12 years. There is yet another option, offered Elder Thorn, who had remained silent until now. The oldest member of the pack, his wisdom was respected above all others. Face him, here, on our territory, where we stand with you. I stared at him, my heart hammering. You mean, confront Roman directly? The elder nodded. Not with violence, unless he forces that path, but with truth. These children are old enough now to have a voice in their own fate. Let the king see what his heirs have become without his influence. Let him hear from them directly. Fear and something else, something that felt dangerously like hope, warred within me. You're suggesting I stop running. I'm suggesting, Elder Thorn said gently, that after 12 years, perhaps it is time to stand your ground. The council meeting ended with a decision. We would prepare for Roman's arrival, securing our borders but not closing them. If he came peacefully, requesting an audience, he would be granted one, under strict conditions, and with the full protection of the pack around us. If he came with aggression, he would be met with unified resistance. That night, I sat the twins down and explained everything. They deserved to know, to have time to process what was coming. Your father has likely discovered where we are, I told them, watching their expressions carefully. He's traveling north, possibly to find you. To my surprise, neither showed the fear I expected. Instead, they exchanged that look, their silent communication that excluded even me. We know, Elian said finally. We've been feeling him getting closer for weeks now. In our dreams, Arya explained, the distance between us has been shrinking. It's like a pull, getting stronger. Are you afraid? I asked softly. Another shared glance before Arya answered. Yes, but also curious. He's part of us, Elian added quietly. Half of who we are comes from him. I reached out, taking one of each of their hands. Listen to me, both of you. No matter what happens when Roman arrives, remember this. You are your own persons, not Eastern royalty, not Northern Pack members, though you are both of those things too. But first and always, you are Elian and Arya. Your choices belong to you. What if he tries to take us away? Arya's voice wavered for the first time. I squeezed her hand. The Pack won't allow it. I won't allow it. But more importantly, you have the right to refuse. You're old enough now that even royal Lycan law recognizes your agency in such matters. And if we wanted to know him? Elian asked hesitantly. Would you be angry? The question pierced me to my core. Of course they would wonder about him, want to understand the other half of their heritage. How could I deny them that knowledge, that connection, simply because of my own painful history with Roman? I would never be angry with you for wanting to know your father, I said carefully. But I would be vigilant about ensuring he doesn't manipulate or coerce you. They nodded, absorbing this. Then Arya asked the question I'd been dreading most. Do you hate him? For what he did at the wedding? How to answer this honestly without burdening them with my pain. I don't hate him, I said finally. I feared him once. Then I defied him. Now I simply wish for him to see you both clearly, to recognize the remarkable people you've become without his interference. The Pack's scouts brought the news at dawn. A small fleet of 3 vessels had been spotted approaching the northern harbor, each flying the royal standard of the Eastern realms. Roman had arrived with an entourage, but not an army, a promising sign that he hadn't come seeking war. I stood on the mountain overlook with Liam and the other guardians, watching as the ships docked in the small harbor town at the edge of Pack territory. Even from this distance, my enhanced vision could make out the figures disembarking. Royal guards in their distinctive black leather, advisors in formal Eastern court attire, and at their center, a tall figure whose bearing was unmistakable even after 12 years. Roman Nightshade, the Lycan king, father of my children. Remember the plan, Liam said quietly beside me. We meet them at the border stone. The twins stay in the village until we determine his intentions. I nodded, unable to speak past the knot in my throat. After years of running, of looking over my shoulder, of constructing new identities and new lives, I was about to face the man I had fled. The man who had rejected me and, by extension, our unborn children. The border stone was an ancient marker at the edge of Stonecrest territory, a massive granite boulder etched with the Pack's symbol. Tradition dictated that all visitors request permission to cross this boundary, acknowledging the Pack's sovereignty. We gathered there in ceremonial formation, Liam and Maya at the front, as alpha pair, flanked by the Pack's senior guardians. I stood slightly behind them, no longer the frightened runaway, but a respected healer of the Northern Pack. Roman's procession approached with measured steps along the forest path, the morning sun glinting off the silver emblems on their formal attire, and then, suddenly he was before us, close enough that I could see the changes 12 years had wrought. His midnight hair was now streaked with silver at the temples. Lines had formed at the corners of his eyes. But the eyes themselves, those amber depths that his children had inherited, remained as intense as I remembered. Focused now entirely on me. For a breathless moment, no one spoke. Then Roman stepped forward, stopping precisely at the border stone. Alpha Stonecrest, he addressed Liam formally, inclining his head in the traditional gesture between Pack leaders. I request permission for myself and my advisors to enter your territory for the purpose of diplomatic discussion. Liam studied him, his posture revealing nothing. You arrive unannounced at our borders, King Nightshade. What matter is so urgent that it requires this personal attention? Roman's gaze flickered to me before returning to Liam. I seek audience with Clara Blackwell, formerly of the Northern Moon Pack, and the children she has kept from their father for 12 years. Murmurs rippled through the gathered Pack members at his directness. I stepped forward to stand beside Liam. I go by Clara Bennett now, I said, meeting Roman's gaze steadily. And I've kept no one from anything. I've protected my children from being used as political pawns. A muscle twitched in Roman's jaw, the only sign that my words had affected him. That was never my intention, wasn't it? I challenged. You rejected me publicly, then sent your guards to seize the children once you learned of their existence. What would you call that? A grievous misunderstanding, he replied, his deep voice carrying to all present. One I've come to correct. Liam cut through the tension. This is not a conversation for a border crossing. King Nightshade, you may enter with 2 advisors only. Your guards will remain outside our territory. Roman considered this, then nodded. Agreed. He gestured, and most of his entourage stepped back. Only 2 remained at his side. An older man I recognized as his chief advisor, Victor, and a woman I didn't know, dressed in the robes of a royal historian. As we led them back to the main village, I walked beside Maya, my heart thundering against my ribs. She squeezed my hand briefly. Steady. She murmured, remember who you are now, not what you were when you last stood before him. The council lodge had been prepared for this meeting. A central fire burned low, with seating arranged in the traditional circle of equals. No thrones, no hierarchy beyond the respect accorded to pack leadership. The twins waited inside with Elder Thorne, as we had planned, their faces turned toward the door as we entered, and I saw the exact moment they laid eyes on their father for the first time. Recognition flashed across their features. The man from their dreams now standing before them in flesh and blood. Roman, for his part, stopped abruptly in the doorway, his composed expression faltering as he beheld his children. The resemblance was unmistakable. Arya with my pale blonde hair but his striking amber eyes. Elian nearly a younger version of Roman himself, but with a gentleness in his features that his father had never possessed. Elian and Arya, Roman said softly, their names sounding strange in his voice. You've grown strong. The twins rose to their feet in unison, the synchronized movement highlighting their connection in a way that made several of Roman's entourage exchange glances. I moved to stand behind my children, placing a protective hand on each of their shoulders. This is King Roman Nightshade of the Eastern Realms, I introduced formally. Your father. Elian nodded solemnly. We know. His voice was steady, revealing none of the turmoil I knew he must be feeling. We've seen you in our dreams. As I have seen glimpses of you, Roman acknowledged, though dreams are poor substitutes for presence. Why are you here now? Arya asked directly, her gaze unflinching. After 12 years, Roman's advisors shifted uncomfortably at her boldness, but the king himself seemed to approve of her directness. Because I only recently learned of your existence, he replied. And because it is time to correct a wrong that has separated us for too long. Please, be seated, Liam intervened, gesturing to the arrangement of chairs and cushions. This conversation deserves proper time and attention. Once everyone was settled, Roman continued, addressing his words primarily to the twins. 12 years ago, I made a decision based on false information and political pressure. I rejected your mother at what should have been our bonding ceremony, believing rumors that had been deliberately spread by those who opposed our union. Why would anyone oppose it? Elian asked. Roman's advisor, Victor, spoke for the first time. Your mother came from a small, politically insignificant pack. Many at court believed the king should form a more advantageous alliance through marriage with one of the stronger eastern packs. So I was inconvenient, I said flatly. Roman's eyes met mine. You were a threat to those who had their own candidates for Luna Queen. When you disappeared after the ceremony, I assumed you had returned to your pack in shame. It wasn't until years later, when your uncle finally admitted the truth during trade negotiations, that I learned you had been carrying my heirs. And suddenly I became valuable again. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. No. Roman's response was sharp, definitive. You became the woman I had wronged. The children became the innocent lives I had failed to protect. If that's true, I challenged, then why did your guards try to forcibly take us from the Western Isles? A flash of genuine surprise crossed Roman's face. They were instructed to locate you and extend an invitation to return, with full royal protection and recognition, never to take anyone by force. The female advisor cleared her throat. If I may, Your Majesty. At Roman's nod, she addressed the room. The guards in question were disciplined upon their return for exceeding their orders. Their leader admitted to acting on the suggestion of Duke Dominic Stormwolf, who had his own interest in ensuring the royal heirs were either secured or eliminated. A chill ran through me at the implication. Dominic? Your own cousin ordered this? My cousin has been plotting to take my throne for years, Roman said grimly. Royal twins would permanently block his claim to succession. He hoped either to control you and the children himself, or to ensure you disappeared permanently. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. The guards hadn't been acting on Roman's direct orders, but on Dominic's manipulation, their urgency, their refusal to wait for my cooperation, all designed to force a confrontation that would end with us either captured or dead, either outcome serving Dominic's purposes. That's why you've come yourself, Maya said, understanding dawning in her eyes. Not just to find your heirs, but to protect them. Roman inclined his head. Dominic's challenge grows stronger. There have been attempts against me, against loyalists. The cord is fractured between those who support my rule and those who have been swayed by his promises of reform. Reform? I questioned. His vision for our kind involves retreating further from human territories, consolidating power, purifying bloodlines, Victor explained. Many of the older families find his ideas appealing in these changing times. Elian leaned forward, his expression intensely focused. And what is your vision, Father? The question, direct, mature, insightful, seemed to catch Roman off guard. For a moment I glimpsed something unexpected in his eyes. Pride. Adaptation, he answered after a moment. Strength through diversity, not isolation. Alliance rather than dominance. It is what I was working toward when I arranged the union with your mother's pack, before politics and pride intervened. You speak of alliance, I said carefully. Yet you rejected me publicly and have allowed your heir, your royal bloodline, to live in exile for 12 years. Pain flashed across Roman's features, genuine and unguarded. I have made grievous mistakes, Clara. I come now not to demand, but to request. Not to command, but to invite. Invite us to what? Arya asked. To return to the Eastern Court, not as captives or as symbols, but as my acknowledged heirs, Roman said, looking between the twins. And your mother as a respected royal advisor with full autonomy. I stared at him in disbelief. You expect me to believe you've had this complete change of heart? That you now value me as more than a convenient vessel for your bloodline? Roman met my gaze directly. What I valued or failed to value 12 years ago is irrelevant. What matters is now. What matters is them. He nodded toward our children. And yes, what matters is you. The woman who had the courage to defy a king to protect her children. The woman who built a life of dignity and purpose far from the power that was her due. The woman whose strength I tragically failed to recognize until it was too late. His words hung in the air between us, sincere in a way I couldn't dismiss despite my lingering distrust. Elian and Arya exchanged their silent communication again before Elian spoke. We need time, he said simply. To consider. To discuss as a family. Of course, Roman agreed immediately. I will remain in the harbor town for 3 days. Whatever you decide, I will respect. As the formal meeting concluded and Roman's party prepared to depart, he paused beside me at the lodge entrance. For a moment, we stood in silence, watching as the twins conversed with Liam and Elder Thorne across the village green. They're remarkable, Roman said softly. You've raised them well. I've raised them free, I corrected. Free to choose their own paths. He nodded, his expression contemplative. Perhaps that is what gives them the strength I see in them, a strength our court sorely needs. And if they choose to remain here, if I do? Roman turned to face me fully. Then I would visit when permitted. I would ensure your continued safety from Dominic and his allies. And I would hope, perhaps, to earn forgiveness, not as a king, but as a man who once let fear of political weakness override what should have been the greatest joy of his life. 3 days later, as the summer sun set over the northern mountains, we gave Roman our answer. We would return to the Eastern Court, not permanently, but for 1 year, a trial period during which the twins would learn about their heritage and bloodline while maintaining their connection to the Stonecrest pack. I would accompany them as both mother and advisor, with the freedom to return north with my children at any point if I deemed it necessary. As our small caravan departed from the packlands, the twins riding ahead with Roman while I followed with Maya, who had insisted on accompanying us as both support and ambassador. I found myself reflecting on my grandmother's music box and the wisdom it had carried. True strength isn't in claws or teeth, but in a heart that bends without breaking. For 12 years I had bent, adapting, surviving, creating safe havens for my children in one territory after another. I had bent, but I had never broken. And now, perhaps, it was time to stand tall again, to face the past not with fear, but with the strength I had built in all those years of bending. Ahead of me, Elian laughed at something Roman said, the sound carrying back on the summer breeze. Arya's voice joined his, bright and curious, as she asked a question about the eastern forests. They rode not as captives returning to a prison, but as young royals eager to explore a birthright long denied them, by circumstance, by politics, and yes, by my own protective fear. The future remained unwritten. The Eastern Court might embrace them or reject them. Roman's redemption might prove genuine or hollow. But whatever came next, we would face it together, no longer running, no longer hiding. We were, at long last, simply journeying forward.